Hello, hello! Pete's Packs here with another Commander deck. Today we have the Kamigawa Neon Dynasty Buckle Up deck. So let's see what we get. Now, this one did make a bit of a splash at release. It contains a couple of cards that have seen quite a bit of legacy play. And has some really interesting combos. So, as with the other Neon Dynasty deck, you get 9 punch-out tokens, or punch-out counters, rather. And they are foiled. You also get a horizontal deck separator that you can punch out for keeping your tokens separate or just to use in any number of situations. I like to use these with the let's see, like the Ultimate Guard, or like the Ultimate Guard Sidewinders, or like the Gamegenic side-loading deck boxes to keep my deck boxes organized. Pretty nice for that, and they come free with Commander decks, so that's pretty cool. We've got our standard glued up deck box. This one luckily also doesn't have a broken glue seam, so this one may be slightly better than some of the older ones. They do break apart pretty quickly, so you'll want to replace that as soon as possible. A little filler piece. It's also recyclable. Also, most of the packaging in these are recyclable, which is nice. Get the same Dragon Spirit double-sided 1 to 40 life token, or life counter, rather. Then we have a insert that introduces the deck. Deck is, of course, called Buckle Up, and covers some of the commander rules. This deck is centered around vehicles. And then on the other side, you've got a nice picture and a little profile on Katori, Pilot Prodigy, who is the face commander for the deck. Okay. So let's get into it. So this is a blue-white deck, so it's Zorius. And it is centered around vehicles, which is interesting. Some of our prior vehicle strategies were mostly centered around like red-white or red-black. So this is a interesting shift from that. Kamigawa Neon Dynasty did have quite a bit of support for vehicles in white this time around, and a bit in blue. So, interesting shift from Kaladesh, where we first had vehicles introduced. Unfortunately, the quick pull on this deck wrapping was not effective. So we have that. And our face commander, which is Katori, Pilot Prodigy. So for 3 mana, you get a 2/4. Vehicles you control have crew 2. Do not discount how powerful that is. Then at the beginning of combat on your turn, target artifact creature you control gains lifelink and vigilance until end of turn. Then our second face commander, or the alternate one, is a card that's actually seen a little bit of play in Legacy. Is Shurikai, Genesis Engine. This also has some interesting infinite combos, effectively, especially with things like Intruder Alarm that let you untap when a creature comes into play. But for 4 mana, you get an 8/8 vehicle that can be your commander. This also has an interesting thing of that it can be used in Oathbreaker, even though it's not a Planeswalker. So there's a very interesting thing there because it does directly say that it can be your commander. But for 4 mana, you get an 8/8 vehicle with a 1 and tap to draw 2 cards, then discard a card. Create a 1/1 colorless pilot creature token with this creature crews vehicles as though its power were 2 greater, and this has crew 8. So, of course, it is a Pringle already. We have some reprints from Neon Dynasty. Specifically, we have Imperial Recovery Unit, Mobilizer Mech, Prodigy's Prototype. Then we will get into what we have from the other stuff. So we have Aeronaut Admiral, which is a 3/1 flying for 4 that gives creatures you can or vehicles you control flying. Armed and Armored, so 2 mana instant. Vehicles you control become artifact creatures until end of turn. Choose any number of dwarf you control. Attach any number of equipment you control to it. Or choose a dwarf you control, attach any number of equipment you control to it, which is interesting. We have Crush Contraband. So for 4 mana, choose one or both, instant. Exile target artifact, exile target enchantment. Then we have Dispatch. Tap target creature, and if you have Metalcraft, so if you control 3 or more artifacts, exile that creature instead. It's a 1 mana instant. So if you have Metalcraft, it is a slightly better Swords to Plowshares or Path to Exile. We have Generous Gift, which is the green, or the white version of Beast Within. So for 2 and a white, instant. Destroy target permanent, its controller creates a 3/3 green elephant creature token, which is interesting that it's green. We have Mirrorsmith. So for 2 mana, whenever you cast an artifact spell, you may pay 1. If you do, create a 1/1 mirror, or 1/1 colorless mirror artifact creature token. And good old Swords to Plowshares, we all know what this does by now. Ethereum Sculptor, 2 mana, 1/2, that artifact spells you control cost 1 less to cast. Get Reality Shift, 2 mana instant, exile target creature, its controller manifests the top card of their library. Very powerful removal spell for blue. We have Riddlesmith. It's one of the cards that it is a reprint from Scars of Mirrodin, if I remember correctly. But this is a key part of the deck called the Riddler in Legacy. So for 1 and a blue, you get a 2/1. Whenever you cast an artifact spell, you may draw a card. If you do, discard a card. And good old Thoughtcast. So affinity for artifacts. It's a 5 mana sorcery, and you draw 2 cards. Vidalcan Engineer. 1 and a blue. Tap to add 2 mana of any one color. Spend this only to cast artifact spells or activate abilities of artifacts. Whirler Rogue. 2 blue. When it enters the battlefield, create 2 1/1 colorless Thopters with flying. Tap 2 untapped artifacts you control. Target creature can't be blocked this turn, which is a very powerful ability. We have Arcanist Owl, which is 4 hybrid white-blue mana. It's a flying 3/3. Whenever it enters the battlefield, look at the top 4 of your library. You may reveal an artifact or enchantment from them and put it into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. Then we have Wrath Capuchin, Ship's Mage. This is from the original Dominaria. So for 4 mana, you get a 3/3 flash flying, and you may cast historic spells as though they had flash. So that's artifacts, legendaries, and sagas, which is very powerful in a strategy like this. Being able to give all your fast mana flash, being able to give your enablers and vehicles flash, very, very powerful. We have Arcane Signet, we know what that does. Azorius Signet, we should all know what that is. We have Colossal Plow. So for 2 mana, you get a 6/3 vehicle. And whenever it attacks, you add triple red and gain 3 life. Until end of turn, you don't lose mana as steps and phases end. Now keep in mind, that does not only mean the mana from this. That's all your mana can float between phases and steps until end of turn. It has crew 6. We have Felwar Stone. We should know what that is by now. It's a mana rock. Foundry Inspector, 3 mana, 3/2. Artifact spells you cast cost 1 less. Gold Mirror, it's Mana Dork, 1/1 for 2, taps for a white. And Raider's Carve, reprint from Kaldheim. 3 mana, 4/4 vehicle with crew 3. Whenever it attacks, look at the top card of your library. If it's a land card, you may put it into play tapped. Shimmer Mirror, 3 mana flash. You may cast artifact spells as though they had flash. So, yet again, working within the same theme. Silver Mirror, same as Golden Mirror, except for blue. Soul Ring, Aerial Surveyor. It's a vehicle with crew 2 for 3/4 flyer at 3 mana. Whenever it attacks, if defending player controls more lands than you, search your library for a basic plains and put it onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle. So a good catch-up mechanic there. We have Drum Bellower, 3 mana, 2/1 Flying Spirit. Untap all creatures you control during each other player's untapped step. So very powerful ability there. Then we have Iron Soul Enforcer, 5 mana, 4/4. Whenever it or a commander you control attacks alone, return target artifact from your graveyard to the battlefield. So, good way to keep bringing stuff back. Organic Extinction, 10 mana sorcery with Improvise. Destroy all non-artifact creatures. Okay, then we have Release to Memory. 4 mana instant, exile target opponent's graveyard. For each creature exiled this way, create a 1/1 colorless spirit creature token. So great graveyard hate that gives you a bunch of tokens. Another card that has made a big splash, specifically in Legacy, is Swift Reconfiguration. For a white, you have a flash enchantment that can enchant a creature or vehicle. Enchanted permanent is a vehicle artifact with crew 5, and it loses all other card types. It's not a creature unless it's crewed. So this, with Devoted Druid, lets you generate infinite mana, which is very useful. Access denied. Counter target spell, create X 1/1 colorless Slaughter artifact creature tokens with flying, where X is the spell's mana value. That's for 5 mana. Cyberdrive Awakener, a 6 mana flying 4/4. Other artifact creatures you control have flying. When it enters the battlefield until end of turn, each non-creature artifact you control becomes an artifact creature with base power and toughness 4/4. So like treasure tokens, clue tokens, food, all of that, anything, any kind of artifacts, even your non-token artifacts, any kind of artifact you have can become a 4/4 until end of turn. This can be fantastic for finishing off players. It can also lead to some major blowouts. So please be aware of that. Imposter Mech. So 1 and a blue. For a 3/1 vehicle with crew 3, you may have it enter the battlefield as a copy of a creature an opponent controls, except it's a vehicle with artifact. It's a vehicle artifact with crew 3 and loses all other card types. This can copy. If your opponent has a Devoted Druid, you can copy this to make infinite mana. You can use this to copy a lot of other things as well to go infinite. We have the one that most people think of, Kappa Cannoneer. This allowed 8 cast to be a thing in Legacy beyond what it was. So this really made 8 cast amazing. Is a 6 mana 4/4 with Improvise, Ward 4, and whenever an artifact enters the battlefield under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on Kappa Cannoneer, and it can't be blocked this turn. I cannot stress enough how absolutely backbreaking this card can be. Katsumasa the Animator, 4 mana, 3/3 flyer, with 2 and a blue. Until end of turn, target non-creature artifact you control becomes an artifact creature and gains flying. If it's not a vehicle, it has base power and toughness 1/1 until end of turn. At the beginning of your upkeep, put a +1/+1 counter on each of up to 3 target non-artifact or non-creature artifacts. This basically gives all your vehicles 3 mana crew. Or crew for 3 mana. Then we have Research Thief. 6 mana flash flying. Whenever an artifact creature you control deals combat damage to a player, draw a card 3/3. Universal Surveillance. X blue blue blue. Improvise. Draw X cards as a sorcery. This can draw a lot of cards, especially if you have something that generates a ton of artifacts for you. Surge Hacker Mech, that is a reprint from Neon Dynasty. We have Cataclysmic Gearhulk, which is from Kaladesh, I believe. Maybe Aether Revolt. I'm pretty sure it's Kaladesh. But 3 white, Vigilance, Vigilant 4/5. When it enters the battlefield, each player chooses an artifact, creature, enchantment, and planeswalker from among the non-land permanents they control, and then sacrifices the rest. Indomitable Archangel. 2 white, for 4/4 flying, with Metalcraft. When you have Metalcraft, artifacts you control have Shroud as long as you control 3 or more artifacts. Keep in mind this is Shroud, not hexproof, so you cannot target either. Another fantastic card in this deck that is played heavily in Pioneer, and that is Parhelion 2. This is part of Greasefang combo. So it's an 8 mana vehicle that's flying, first strike, and vigilance. When it attacks, create 2 4/4 white angel creature tokens with flying and vigilance that are attacking as crew 4. And it's a 5/5 on its own. So that is 13 power that is immediately in play off of Greasefang. Then we have Shram, Senior Edificer. This is used in Cheerios. It's also used in a few other just churn strategies. So for 1 and a white, you get a 2/2 legendary dwarf advisor that whenever you cast an aura, equipment, or vehicle spell, you draw a card. That is cast. Not comes into play, cast. Then we have Teshar, Ancestor's Apostle. This was used as part of another combo deck, actually. And it says, whenever you cast a historic spell, return target creature card with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. I forget exactly what the thing with this was. I remember it had to do with Mox Amber. I don't remember what else it used. Yet again, so this deck was absolutely fantastic on the value. So you have another piece of 8 casts that's also used in several other Legacy decks and Modern decks, and even some Pioneer decks, with Emery, Lurker of the Loch. So 2 and a blue. It costs 1 less for each artifact you control. When it comes into play, you mill 4 cards. And you can tap it to choose target artifact in your graveyard. You may cast that card this turn. We have Jace, Architect of Thought. This is one of the few commander decks that actually comes with planeswalkers. So for 4 mana, it comes in with 4 loyalty. +1 until your next turn. Whenever a creature an opponent controls attacks, it gets -1/-0 until end of turn. This is in Commander. This does not just apply to one opponent. This applies to all of your opponents, and it does not apply to when it attacks you. It's whenever it attacks. So that applies to your opponents as well. Also, if there are multiple combat steps, each time it attacks, it gets -1/-0. So keep that in mind until end of turn. And its -2 is reveal the top 3 cards of your library. An opponent separates those cards into 2 piles. You choose which opponent. Put one pile into your hand and the other on the bottom of your library in any order. So it's 3 cards. It's almost Force of, or not Force of Will, but it's almost Fact or Fiction. Then -8 for each player. Search that player's library for a non-land card and exile it. Then that player shuffles. You may cast those cards without paying their mana costs. In Commander, that's all 3 opponents. And we have Master of Ethereum for 2 and a blue. This used to be a really big part of Affinity. So its power and toughness is each equal to the number of artifacts you control. Other artifact creatures you control get +1/+1. Get another card that sees play in 8 casts and several other decks. You have Sai, Master Thopterist. Whenever you cast an artifact spell, create a 1/1 colorless Thopter artifact creature token with flying. 1 in a blue, sacrifice 2 artifacts, draw a card. That's a 1/4. You have Thopter Spy Network, reprint from Magic Origins. So 4 mana enchantment. At the beginning of your upkeep, if you control an artifact, create a 1/1 colorless Thopter artifact creature token with flying. Whenever 1 or more artifact creatures you control deal damage to a player, or deal combat damage to a player, draw a card. We have from Throne of Eldraine, reprint Dance of the Manse. X blue-white, or X white-blue rather. Return up to X target artifact and or non-aura enchantment cards, each with mana value X or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. If X is 6 or more, those permanents are 4/4 creatures in addition to their other types. We have Hannah, Ship's Navigator, which conveniently can also be a commander for this deck. 1 white-blue, Legendary Human Artificer, 1/2. 1 white-blue, return target artifact or enchantment from your graveyard to your hand. We have Cultivator's Caravan, 3 mana for a 5/5 vehicle with crew 3. Tap, add 1 mana of any color. So normally it's a mana rock. Then we have Mirage Mirror, 3 mana artifact. For 2, it becomes a copy of target artifact, creature, enchantment, or land until end of turn. Peacewalker Colossus. By the way, this Mirage Mirror can also be used with Dark Depths to create a Myriad Lodge immediately. Peacewalker Colossus. That's a 3 mana 6/6 with crew 4, and 1 and a white. Another target vehicle you control becomes an artifact creature until end of turn. Another card used in Greasefang, and also used as a sideboard card for most Karn Wish, or for a lot of Karn Wish boards. We have Sky Sovereign, Console Flagship. It's a 5 mana 6/5 vehicle with crew 3. Has flying. When it enters the battlefield or attacks, it deals 3 damage to target creature or planeswalker an opponent controls. Then we have Smuggler's Copter. Another fantastic card. Keep in mind, this was so good, it was banned in Standard. Also known as the Looter Scooter. It's a 2 mana 3/3 flying vehicle with crew 1, and whenever it attacks or blocks, you draw a card. If you do, discard a card. You may draw a card. You don't have to. And Solemn Simulacrum, 4 mana 2/2. When it comes into play, you can search your library for a basic, put it into play tapped. When it dies, you draw a card. Fantastic card. It's been fantastic since it was printed in Mirrodin. I think it was Mirrodin. Might have been Darksteel. Pretty sure it was Mirrodin, though. Weatherlight. It's a 4/5 vehicle with flying and crew 3. When it deals combat damage to a player, look at the top 5 cards of your library. You may reveal a historic card from among them and put it into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. So that's artifacts, legendaries, and sagas. We have Exotic Orchard, Port Town, Prairie Stream, Skycloud Expanse, Spire of Industry. So Spire of Industry for artifacts is effectively City of Brass. Fantastic card. Temple of Enlightenment, Command Tower, some plains, some islands, and that's the Into that, we have our Face Commander cardboard stand-in. And we get to our tokens, and this also has some pretty cool tokens. We have a 4/4 flying Vigilant Angel. It's also an elephant. Then we have an elephant that's also an angel, so 2 of that same token. Those tokens go with Parhelion, and are oddly enough, fairly expensive. They're about $3 a piece as of the time of this recording. So then we have a Mirror Pilot token, Spirit Mirror, another Spirit Thopter, another Spirit Thopter, a Spirit Thopter, Spirit Thopter, Spirit Thopter, and Spirit Thopter. And these are some of the coolest Thopter tokens I have ever seen. There are these awesome origami butterflies. And then a stand-in card for Turn Order. So, if you play a lot of Legacy, or Modern, or Pioneer, this deck is worth picking up just to have, you know, extra, or to get closer to your playsets, or pick up 4 of them to make sure that you have your Kappa Cannoneers, your Spires of Industry, your Parhelions. Like, there's so much good stuff packed into this deck that I am very happy I bought 8 of them. It's one of the few Commander decks that I would consider buying more of in the future. Because, again, there's so much value for so many formats in this deck. Even just picking it up for trade stuff could be worthwhile. This is what Commander Precon should be. This was a masterclass on the correct way to give your players value and make it feel like they're getting something for their money. Printing good shit in your precons. In fact, this is one of the few precons that I was super happy with out of the box. Now, there are things you could do to improve this. Adding intruder alarms, or few different other removal pieces, some more board sweeps, something like to board sweep or board wipes to utilize, you know, your vehicles, because they're not creatures most of the time. So like Supreme Verdict would slot very well into here. Maybe adding a few counterspell effects. And then there's a few in-place improvement cards that you could go with. Rhystic Study, Mystic Remora, stuff like that, maybe. But that's not really the kind of game plan you're going for with this, so I don't know. But it is definitely a fun precon. Has a ton of value just built into it. And it's the only way to get Kappa Cannoneers, so if 8-cast is a deck that you enjoy, you have quite a few pieces of it already in this, so something to consider. So yeah. I love this deck as far as value goes. But all right, but that wraps up that. Thank you for joining me on this adventure. As always, don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe. And until next time, we'll see you in the next one. Or until next time, stay awesome, and we'll see you in the next one. Thanks. Bye.